It's me, Queen J, back with a very special episode of Let's Get Uncomfortable. Before we get into today's topic, we always start with a bit of mindfulness, so that's not going to change. But I want to introduce my lovely guest. I have the pleasure of interviewing today Miss Fairen Kia, the owner and founder of Love Thy Belly LLC. My bad, y'all, but it's good. It's good. So we're gonna touch base with her and about what that actually means, and we're gonna get into it. But now it is time to pause, breathe, and relax. It is now time for us to open our mind to exploring new ways of healing within this lifetime. It is now time for us to let go and move forward and accept the things that we may feel that are out of our control. Accept that it is out of our control and allow ourselves to enter a space without judgment, just grace and acknowledgement, so that we may better ourselves for our present and that it lasts in our future. It is now time for us to come and love on us in our totality, whether that be loving the darkness, loving the light, loving everything in its complexity, and loving the skin and body that we are in. All right, y'all. I hope that brought y'all some peace and some woosah, as it always does for me. I am excited for this episode because, like I said, we are talking about loving ourselves in our totality. But I really want you to just tell us, take it away, because I have so many questions, but I want you to start first.
Okay. So my name is Farron Kia. As Queen J said, I'm the founder and owner of Love Thy Belly LLC. It is the premier body positive organization located in the city of Louisville, but we do have a greater outreach through all forms of social media platforms. So Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok. Um,
Yes.
we have all the social medias. Not all of them. I'm sure there are plenty of more. There are plenty more. The way that social media rapidly increases and grows, but some of the top ones we are. You can find us across all of those social media platforms, and we do have a website as well, lovethybelly.org. And you can subscribe to getting more information about Love Thy Belly, but also about resources that are available for total healing and total wellness. Um, Love Thy Belly started actually as a means for me to reclaim my power. And in me doing so, I was very open, honest, and vulnerable about my own experience with myself, my body, the healing journey that I was on, the healing work that I was doing, the shadow work that I was doing at the time. I was very public about it. And in doing so, other people started to share their stories with me. And so, Love Thy Belly, although it was something that was just for me, it became this greater purpose that I never even had an idea it would become. It's been an amazing, amazing journey.
So how long have you been around? How long has Love Thy
It
Belly
started
been?
out as a photo shoot in 2018. Yep. A friend of mine at the time,
Okay,
he was like,
okay.
I got my camera, let's just go outside. And so one of my best friends, my soulmate, I had her style me for the shoot. She's a stylist. And it was just this extremely opening, vulnerable photo shoot of me being and existing in this fat body outside in short shorts and short
Yes.
skirts and crop tops, and just saying to the world, I own my body and I get to say what my body
Mhm.
does.
I love that. So you never envisioned it being this, of course, and I can relate to that because Let's Get Uncomfortable started from my healing journey, and it kind of just has expanded into other people coming on and sharing like how they navigate around their healing journey. So what was it like when you were stepping into like, I'm owning my body, I'm stepping in my fatness, I'm empowered by my fatness? Like, what was that like?
It was, at first it was really difficult. I think it was around 2014, 15 maybe, that I actually purchased my first crop top, and I didn't wear it. Like, it just sat in the back of my closet. I remember going into
Mm-hmm.
Charlotte Russe. Charlotte Russe used to carry plus sizes. So I went to Charlotte Russe and I purchased these 2 crop tops. And they sat in the back of my closet for
Mm-hmm.
so long, and then one day I just put them on. Or I put one of them on, and I was just like, okay. But I was wearing like really high waisted pants, and then the crop top. So really, like, there was maybe like this
This
little
little
sliver
sliver,
of my belly,
yeah.
right? Like, it was like, and I had on brown pants too. So it was just kind of like,
You were hiding
I
it,
was,
but you were close. You
right?
were
I was
getting
like
there. Yeah,
tiptoeing.
yeah.
So like put my toe to see if the water was
Mm-hmm.
cold, but then
But
wasn't going too
yeah,
much into
I
it.
get that. I get that. I can understand that. I
Mm-hmm.
did that. So I want to ask about the 5 pillars of Love Thy Belly.
Mm-hmm.
Can you elaborate on those? Because I was looking at that post and I was like, wow, I love it.
Yeah, so the pillars actually started in terms of me discovering what total wellness actually meant for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because in 2015, I believe is when it was, I went on this physical health journey.
Mm-hmm.
It was 16, it was 2016. I went on this
Yeah.
physical health journey. I remember thinking to myself, I feel trapped in my body. And
Ooh.
so it felt like my fat was like this like prison that I couldn't escape. And so I went on this journey of like working out 2 times a day, doing eating specifically, like eating a certain amount of foods, eating a certain level of food, eating certain types of foods, and demanding that I don't do anything that would be pleasurable, right? Because it was like, I can't have pleasure because I have to do these things because these are the things that are going to change my body and make my body look this way to be socially
Yeah.
acceptable. And so I was going about this in a very unhealthy way. Like the working out 2 times a day. It was like, if I didn't work out, then I was telling myself that I was bad and I was a horrible person because I didn't do these things. Yeah. And so
Elaborate on that because I've noticed that I have a lot of friends who we all want to, either all of us want to be thick or we all want to be the other body, right? Usually, typically. And I've noticed that I have friends who are fat and they'll be like, I hate my body. And I'll tell them, I'm like, you ain't got to go that hard on your body. It's your body. Like, be gentle. But it's interesting because I think it deals with it's a
Mhm.
mental fight too. It's definitely a mental fight where you're like, okay, I missed the gym. I missed the gym and now I have to do X, Y, and Z to make up for it. But it's usually not a healthy thing that you're doing afterward. You're like,
the dialogue that people have with themselves, the internal and even sometimes external dialogue people have around it is like you're punishing your body, right? And it shouldn't be a punishment, it should be a reward, right? I get to go to the gym, or I get to work out, or I get to release some type of physical energy, or I get to have like movement for my body, right? It's like people don't realize the language that we use in
yeah,
regards to our body. Our brain cannot differentiate between when we're being sarcastic and when we're saying things in a way that is very demeaning to ourselves. That internal monologue that you have, the more
exactly.
negative it is, the more you start to believe it. And so on this journey that I was on, I started to realize that the journey was
Exactly.
20% physical, 20% physical, but it was 80% mental. It was all about what I was saying, how I was saying it,
Exactly.
the thought processes that I had around it. Again, like telling myself that I was bad because I missed a gym session, or I missed a session with my trainer, or whatever, whatever the case may be, or I was bad because I ate something that was not a part of like the diet culture that I was existing in at that time. Um, so the pillars are actually the mind, the body, the spirit, community, and education. And so for me, those were the things that I felt meant the most to me, right? Like my mind, I needed to mentally be okay with where I was in the
Mhm.
body that I was
Yeah.
existing in at that time, regardless of socialization, regardless of media, regardless of how people would consider a body like mine to be a bad body, or a lot of times you'll see
I'm
like a
always seeing
before
them.
after picture kind of thing. And so yes. And so like the language around that, um, when you are comparing someone who's larger to someone who's smaller and you're using it in terms of like a negative connotation, you're then saying that
Yeah.
smaller is better and bigger is bad. And that's like not what people are
Mhm.
necessarily
Yeah.
trying to maybe
Yeah,
insinuate,
cuz
but that is the message that is being passed on.
for sure.
That is the message that people are
Oh yeah,
getting from
no,
that.
cuz I was about to
And not
say
just fat people,
I
right?
see
Not
I
just
see
not
a
just
lot of
plus, not just
before and
plus size
after
people.
cuz I go to the gym pretty frequently, and I that internal dialogue, I have to, I'm working on it, because sometimes I find myself saying I have to go to the gym, and I'm like, you get to go to the gym. Do you have time to go to the gym today? Like, did you do other things? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's all about how you talk to yourself, and if you're nice to yourself, kind to yourself. One of the biggest things that I ever learned
Yes.
was treat
Hmm.
yourself like you would treat your best friend. So hard for our best friends, right?
Ooh, okay.
We go hard for our best friends, right? Why aren't you doing that for yourself?
You should be your first best friend. You should be your first lover. You should be your
Exactly.
first everything.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. And I feel like whenever I see those before and after, I'm always like, I always sucked into that little vortex of like, but she looked good at this. She looked good here. Like, it constantly makes that divide. And I can see why it perpetuates that narrative of like, oh, you didn't look good. It wasn't
Hmm.
acceptable before, but now after. And a lot of people will come back and be like, no, this is just my progress. But it's like, are you really paying attention to what the picture is
Between 2016 and
presenting?
2018, I lost 100 pounds by working out and doing the things. Again, it wasn't a healthy way to do it. And I wish that I would have had a more healthier kind of relationship with my body at that time. But during that time, as I was progressively losing weight, people kept saying, "Oh, you look good now. You look so good now. Oh, I love the way you look
Yeah.
now." And it would like that small three-letter word changes the dynamic of the conversation, because
Mm.
what they ended up doing is they ended up
Woo.
perpetuating the idea that I already had, that I was bad before. My body was bad, so then I was bad, right? And so you're perpetuating this idea by when you're saying to people like, "Oh, you look good now," or "I'm so glad that I love the way you look now,"
Exactly.
instead of just saying, "Oh, you look nice," or "You look good." And if you like, it's the thing is, if you know someone has this goal that they're working towards, congratulate them for meeting their goal or working towards their goal or reaching their goal, whatever, whatever that may be. But language is very important, and words really do matter. The way we use words with people, towards people, the way we use words with ourselves and for
It
ourselves, that
does. It
really matters.
certainly does. And I feel like as someone who has constantly been battling or moving against like body dysmorphia in different ways, it's been like I remember being a kid and like I wouldn't eat certain stuff and they'd be like, why are you just not eating, you're so skinny, you should be, you know what I mean? And I'm like, okay, okay, I get it. But like my family, a lot of my family, I got more curvier women than me. So I would be comparing myself to them, and they be comparing themselves to me. So it perpetuated this idea of like, oh, your body's not good enough. Like it's socially acceptable, but in this family, baby, you need some meat on them bones. You look good if you get thicker,
Well,
you
and
know.
then
So I
Well, and then what I've learned, because I've been doing this work, I call it fat work or fat
yeah,
positive
yeah.
work. And these are my phrases, right? Like I recognize not everybody is comfortable with the term fat.
Mm-hmm.
For me, and I probably should have been very clear on that, but for me, fat is an identifier, just like how I identify as queer, just like how I identify as black, just like how I identify as woman. My identities exist in being a queer, fat, black woman.
I have to no, because hats off to you for owning that word, because I'm just thinking about oh my gosh, Monique, I don't know her last name now, but yes, but the
Monique.
movie Fat Girls,
Ah,
that movie
one of my
was
favorite
so
movies growing
good.
up.
And I remember her being
Okay.
like, she called me a fat bitch. Now I love being fat, but when you do that, yeah, I remember that. I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't appreciate that either. I think it's all about the way people are saying it and in the context. But I hats off to you for owning that, because it's an identifier.
And that again, that was like that's a personal choice that I made in word reclamation, right? Taking a
Of
word that
course.
someone would use to harm you or to demean you and saying, well, this is a word that I'm going to take back for myself. For a lot of women, not all, but for a lot of women and a lot of queer people, we've chosen to take back the word bitch. And instead of being like a word that you can use to hurt my feelings or whatever, it's
Facts.
like, well, there's different connotations to it. Now it's like, bitch, like, ooh, I got tea to tell you, right? Okay. Like,
Ooh, like,
bitch, like,
I
did
know,
you
right?
see
Like,
that?
okay.
You see, so it's like for me, fat became this word of empowerment. It became, yes, I'm fat, but baby, I get paid to
Yes.
be fat. So who's really
Mm-hmm.
winning here?
I think it's me. I think it's you. I think I would say it's you. But yeah, I
Hmm.
love that word reclamation. I'm about to start, and that's the thing that I feel like I do that when it comes to like any of the negative internal dialogue that I've had. Like I used to get called a nerd a lot, and I called myself a nerd because I genuinely love reading and I love anything artistic. Like I could sit at the museum for hours, just leave me there. You know what I mean? Like I can do stuff like that. And when I say that, usually it's my family, they'll be like, no, you don't call yourself a nerd, you are not a nerd, you just have a passion for these things. I'm
Yeah,
like, no, I'm a
I
nerd.
like that
It's
word.
okay. I like it.
Acquire knowledge.
I like that word. That perfectly describes me, okay? But no, I appreciate how you speak to word reclamation for real, because it's very important that we understand that
Hmm.
we can take the power back. Reclaiming our power is such a vital movement when healing, in whatever way that looks like, especially when we do shadow work, because a lot of shadow work is going inward and looking at what we might have done to
Hmm.
contribute
Yeah.
to the problem. And then that's when you look at, oh, well, I allowed them to, or I allowed that word to be perpetuated so much, or whatever the case. I didn't stand
Shadow
up
work
enough,
is looking at
whatever the
that, looking
case,
at those parts of
right?
yourself and being able to identify, like, oh, this is where I went wrong. This is the choice. This is where I made a choice that led
Exactly.
towards this, right? Shadow work is really digging into yourself
Exactly.
and digging into the deepest
For
parts of
real.
yourself, the darkest
And
parts of yourself, the parts of yourself who you try to hide from other
I
people.
know. That's why it's so powerful, because I think it's all about embracing that. It's about accepting that and being like, look, this is a part of me. I can't just ignore you. I can't just ignore this quality because it looks good on paper. But
Hmm.
when you talk about your healing journey, how did you navigate around those hard days? Did you have the tools instilled in you already, or what does that look like for you?
No, I did not. I did not have the tools at all. At the time, I was actually in an abusive relationship, a verbally and emotionally abusive relationship. My partner at the time told me that she didn't love me because I was fat, and it was hard because I'd existed in this body my whole life, right? So before we got into a relationship, this was my body. And some people have that experience where like they start gaining weight in relationships, for whatever reason. Socially,
That's
it's
what I was
called
gonna say.
happy
The
weight,
happy
but
weight. Hey,
but for whatever reason it's called, things happen, right? Over time our bodies change in general, whether we're in a relationship, not in a relationship,
yeah,
whatever the case may be. Bodies just
of
change,
course.
especially women's bodies are going to constantly change for a myriad of reasons, right? Health concerns, getting pregnant, not getting pregnant. Women's bodies change very significantly for a lot of different reasons. And so in that relationship, that's kind of where I solidified Love Thy Belly as a means of me saying, well, fuck you, because I love my body, you know, and you don't love me based off of whatever projections that you have, but that doesn't mean that I
Mm-hmm.
have to stop loving me. And so I actually wrote my first book, Dear Fat Girls When Love Wasn't Enough. And it was a way to
Ooh.
affirm yourself, affirmations for anybody. But it's Dear Fat Girls because that's who I am. That's the lens that I existed in. And so having someone tell me that they
Exactly.
didn't love me because of the way that I
Exactly.
looked, it really did. It shook a lot of the foundation that I had started to build. I was building myself to be this woman, this young woman at the time, was very sure of herself. And so having someone say that to me, someone who I thought loved me, right? Someone who I was building a life with, and to have them say that to me, it really shook a lot of who I was.
Yeah.
And so I wrote the book actually, and I published it in August of 2019 is when I published the book. So it was a little about a year after the first Love Thy Belly photo shoot. And so as I was progressing in Love Thy Belly as a movement, I was also progressing in who I was as a person. And I started therapy as well. I started
That
seeing a
hit. That
therapist,
hit.
and
That
with
hit.
that, we
No,
talked a
because
lot about
I
what
talk about that with my
self-worth
therapist
meant
too, and
and
feeling
what
feelings of
feelings of insignificance
insignificance. I've
were,
never been
and
able
how a
to
lot of these things
say
actually
that.
started.
Like I've
Yeah.
had difficulty saying like I feel insignificant. I've had difficulties like just claiming it and not saying like, oh, this is in my identity, but just being like,
Hmm.
no, that's what I'm feeling right now, you know? So I get you. But go ahead.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. A lot of times black women suffer from that for the most part, for a lot of reasons, but I would say a lot of people do, but specifically black women do, because there is never a time in society and in culture in which we have been allowed to just exist and our existence be enough, right? Since the conception of America, black women's job has always been to be of service to others. And and that's a long conversation, on a whole nother
Uh,
that's a whole nother show.
yeah, no, I
But
that's a oh yeah, but that's why I said it like that. Yeah, because all of those
yes.
moments came up. So no, you absolutely right about that. I feel like I think so would you say that you
Yes.
started getting the tools when you
So I
sought
think the
therapy or when you
I
started
started
okay.
pushing
Okay.
myself with the photo shoot, right? Like as a means to kind of say, like, okay, this is how you're gonna face yourself. I remember like even the day of the photo shoot, I remember I was so hard on myself. I was like, look, your arms are flat, or flabby, your arms are like doing this and they're jiggling and your thighs and has all these dimples and I remember how like I'm going into this photo shoot in which I'm trying to take back my power, trying to take back, who I feel like I was losing, and I'm still having this negative self-talk. And that negative, again, like that negative self-talk, the internal monologues that we have really shape how we are going to go throughout life. And so moving through the photo shoot and starting therapy, and within therapy I was able to have a lot of tools such as journaling and reframing has literally saved me to and that's the process of taking these negative thoughts and reframing them into positive ones, or just reframing what they are meaning to you. So instead of saying something like, I'm bad because I didn't work out today, it's, well, I didn't get the time to have physical activity in my day today, but I'll make sure that I make that a priority tomorrow. Or it's okay that I didn't have physical activity today. That doesn't make me a bad person. It doesn't mean I'm bad. It doesn't mean I'm a failure. It doesn't mean I'm insignificant. It just means that I'm a person. And I may, like I just didn't make the time for that today, or I didn't have time for that today. It's that reframe has literally been something that has saved me. Being able to say, I'm okay to not be perfect. It's okay that I'm a human. It's okay that I make mistakes. It's okay to not be the person that everyone expects me to be all the time.
Mhm. I used to I I feel like I reframe a lot, but it does save you because it gives you that power to be able to go back and be like, "Well, how could I like I always view it to from my lens of like how can I be how can I allow myself grace in this moment that I didn't give myself before? Like how can I let grace in? Because before I used to just stonewall and I used to shut down immediately and I would just be like, all right, I'm just not going to emote. I'm just not going to feel anything. It's fine for me to just keep everything in. Even the internal dialogue, it would just get so bad and I would net like hardly anybody knew that I had such a bad internal dialogue with myself. And then it became like it started to show out externally when I'm having conversations with people and I'm like apologizing profusely because of these things, you know what I mean? Because oh, I pissed off this person or seemingly did, things like that. So when you reframe something and I think just for the warriors, when you guys reframe something, try to think of it as like we said, walking it back, giving yourself love in that moment that you didn't receive, telling yourself like you said, it is okay, it is okay, give yourself grace, it is okay, you are not out of time, I promise. Because that's the one thing that I'd be like, okay, if it wasn't perfect then I have to nail it in this time frame, otherwise I can't put it out. But I'm letting go of that. I really am, because I'm like, okay, we can just breathe. That's why we breathe before we jump into this.
Which I just want to thank you very much for that mindful moment. I needed that. I didn't even know until we were doing it that I needed it. I didn't realize like how much I had been kind of like, like The Body Keeps the Score is a book. So meaning how much you hold.
Oh my god, that book is so good. That book is so, let's just shout out that book
I know
real
that's
quick. That
right.
book changed my life. It's sitting up here. I haven't even I'm going to be real. I haven't finished it all the way because it is such a deep psychological introspective book that I'm just like, okay, let me just take a second. But it is so powerful because it does show you like, oh, your body holds like, I started going to the chiropractor.
Mm,
That's one of my things to do to regulate myself. So I'll go to the chiropractor and make sure that my spine is aligned and everything. And when I first went, the chiropractor told me that the trauma and all the emotions is stored in the torso of the body. So like when our shoulders tense up, that's because we are storing all those unreleased emotions here, and when we relax it flows, it's supposed to flow throughout the body. But a lot of times we get stuck in that cycle of like, oh my god, this
mhm.
keeps happening, we don't have a chance to release it. So that's why I have those mindful moments where like I notice it now, like when I have my mindful moments my shoulders could be like right here and then I'll be like, okay, let me just
Yeah,
relax a little bit. Like I don't know, it helps. But I'm glad I could provide that for you because that's what I am passionate about, mindfulness.
I love that. I was a mindfulness instructor for
What?
young teens or young kids to teens for about a year. And now I do mindful practices in my day-to-day experiences and activities that I do with people and when I do my different workshops and facilitations and things of that nature. And so it's really been incredible to see it be used in a myriad of ways. It be used in school settings, and it be used in. I've gone to other people's events, and they'll start the event with a mindful practice or a practice of giving thanks and giving gratitude. And I mean, it's truly such an incredible experience to see people, specifically Black folks, queer and otherwise, practicing this thing to allow
Yes.
us to be in our bodies for a moment. Because when you move through and you navigate through world as a person of color, specifically Black people, we have to live in this state of double consciousness always. And black people who present as Black too, right? Like we always have to be kind of on guard,
Yes.
or we always have to be alert because we live in America, right? And so It's not the most welcoming place
You
for
right.
Black
You right. Yeah. It's not. It's not the home of the whatever they say. It is not that. It's not that. It's definitely the home of the brave though, because they be
folks. Okay.
brave to do these things now. I mean, like the audacity that y'all have. I was watching a show last night. It's called The Trust, and this black girl named Tolu on Netflix. She said we
A
all
mediocre.
aspire to have the confidence of a white man.
No, seriously. If you've ever in your life met a mediocre white
You
man,
right.
and I have a lot of them in my life, the amount of audacity
Mm-hmm.
and confidence that they have is insane. But who's going to stop them? That's why they have it. Who is going to stop them?
Yep.
Everybody.
But who stops us?
Everybody.
Exactly. And that's why we have to have these practices where it's like, nah,
Yeah.
we need to keep our confidence up. That confidence is not, and that's the one thing I feel like when it comes to a healing journey and just speaking collectively over everybody at this point, I feel like I always say that it is not linear, right? It's going to come have ups and downs. But one thing that I'm realizing like in this season of my life that it is also not something that is stagnant as far as not being dynamic. Like your healing practices can be
Mm-hmm.
different. Like you can journal one day and you can go and say I need the sun the next. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to stay stagnant. It can flow as you flow. It can, and that's something that I'm
Sometimes
realizing.
for my healing, my tools are
Mhm.
therapy. Sometimes my tools are going outside and walking in
Mhm.
grass. Sometimes my tools are throwing on Megan Thee Stallion and just shaking my
Exactly.
ass. Sometimes my tools are laying on the floor
Mhm.
crying my eyes out and just like being as close to the floor as I possibly can. And sometimes my tools are calling up my girls and let's go get brunch
Facts.
and let's just talk and let's just chill and let's just be around each other, build community, be in community care. Sometimes my tools are shit posting across all social media platforms until I get it off my chest. Like you
You got
gotta find what works best for you.
exactly.
And like you said, it's not gonna be the same every day, and it also might not be the same within that day.
That's right. That's true. I feel like especially as we talk about body positivity, okay, question for you. How did you navigate around how did you get to that place where your internal dialogue is now like in that reframe? Like was that easy for you? Was that something that took time?
It definitely takes time to this day,
Mhm.
every day. I intentionally wake up every day making sure that the first thing I do is something that is going to fill my soul. And so whether that be telling like my music to start playing a specific song or a specific artist that I know uplifts me,
Mhm.
whether that be journaling immediately, whether that be opening my notes app in my phone and just typing out something that was on my spirit and I just need to get it out,
Mhm.
whether that be taking an extra 5 minutes just laying there. And if I had started my morning out with like some negative comments or negative thought process, for every negative thought, I give myself 3 positive thoughts. For every
Mm.
negative comment, I give myself 3 positive comments.
I like
So if
that.
today I woke up and I said, like, I hate my body today. Well, I've already said it, right? I've already thought it, whatever. So now it's out there. So now I have to give myself 3 times to go ahead and combat that. But I
Mhm.
love my thighs because they carry me. I love my arms because they carry the weight of things that I need to carry. I love my smile because it lights up the room, or because it makes other people feel warm, or because it's welcoming, right? So I start to tell myself the 3 positive things as a way to combat that. And that came out of that reframing tool as well, of
Ah.
saying to myself that, being honest with yourself. Because sometimes I think people think that when you do positive work, body positivity or positive thinking work, a lot of times people think that means that like you're never negative, or you never have negative thoughts, or you never have a bad day.
Mhm.
And I've found that people really truly think that about me often. I've been told like, well, why can't you just be the person you are on stage? Well, because I'm a whole human.
Yeah.
who has human experiences and
Exactly.
human emotions. And so I'm not going to be one way every single day. I'm
Exactly.
allowed to have bad days. I'm allowed to be sad.
Exactly.
I'm allowed to be angry. I'm allowed to be frustrated. The way that any other human being experiences emotions, I'm going to as well. And that's something that I had to be okay with for myself. And I had to also be okay with advocating about too. Because I did have to learn that people will experience you and perceive you in a way that suits them.
That's a word. That is a that no, that is a word because for me, along with the perfectionism and stuff, I used to be like so I didn't care what people thought about me, but I cared how they perceived me. I cared how they received me basically.
How they experience you.
Yes, how they experienced me. And when I started to realize that, I was like, I I feel like I'm having to perform all the time. I feel like I want them to
Mhm.
see me this way, so I have to do it this way. And then when I don't do it that way, I'm frustrated with myself, but they're like, it was fine. What's wrong? Like so that definitely has been a challenge. Um when you're speaking about, cuz you mentioned that mindfulness, you've seen it being used in other areas. When you talked about it in a school setting, is does mindfulness always look like what we did it before, where you close your eyes and you take a moment to just be in your body, or does it look differently in other practices? Because I don't think I've seen many different practices of mindfulness, and I'm wanting to know more.
So for me, in the experiences that I've currently had, mindfulness itself is taking those pauses to be to be in that moment, to be in that moment, to breathe through that moment. That is how I've seen it be used. But sometimes with kids, it kind of gets hard for them.
Uh huh.
And so there has to be kind of like a guided practice or a guided meditation,
Okay.
similar to what you were doing in the statements that you were making, in the comments that you were saying, and encouraging us to be more focused. And then sometimes mindful moments are just, they have music or they have sounds, and it is, there is no talking, it's completely quiet, and it's
God.
just being able to focus on the music or the sound. Some people will play like meditation music, some people play binaural beats, which are
Mm-hmm.
like ways to help your brain really focus. And it is still being intentional. That is the
Yeah.
importance of mindfulness, is that
Yes.
the moment is intentional, and moment being, 1 minute to 10 minutes, however long, but that moment is intentional in
Mm-hmm.
breathing and being in your body and being present.
Exactly. Okay. I just wanted to touch on that for a little bit. I love mindfulness. I could talk about it all day long. um, so the workshops that you do, what do those
Mhm.
typically look like? How did that come about? What did it feel like when you first started doing those?
Let me see if I don't remember when I first started doing them. I guess in college maybe is when I
Okay.
first started doing diversity facilitations and workshops.
Mm-hmm.
And then under the umbrella of Love Thy Belly, I've started to be able to go into schools, into corporate organizations, at universities. And a lot of what I focus on, thank
That's
you.
amazing. That's
A lot of what
amazing.
I
I'm gonna
focus
just
on, I focus on body diversity. And when I'm
yes.
talking about like maybe like in corporate, in kind of corporate settings,
Mm-hmm.
talking about how workplaces can very easily overlook body being a part of their diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, because they
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily, there's not a culture around thinking about how our day-to-day life can be very exclusionary to large and plus and fat bodies, whether
Mm-hmm.
that be from the structures of the buildings themselves, whether that be from seats and tables, and how our actual furniture is set up,
Yeah.
um, all the way to the weight loss challenges that people do at work and the language around those,
Yeah.
and then dress code policies as
Mm-hmm.
well. Having those, a lot of times these things are very inherently fat phobic, and they're very inherently anti-fat, and they're very inherently not body inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times it's not like a an overarching realization of that until someone points it out to us.
Well, that makes sense because I feel like most companies, they just cater to the people that are smaller or what have you. Like I noticed that because, like I said, my family is a lot bigger than me. They're more curvier than me. So I've noticed those. I have seen a trend of it being like, man, they ain't got no bigger seats. Like, how am I supposed to sit there? How am I supposed to, you know what I mean? Things like that.
Hmm.
And I've even noticed that like nowadays it's kind of expanded into like airplanes and the seating in the airplanes. I'm like, how would somebody, be able to fit in here, or how would they get to fly anywhere? And I do recall like one of my cousins, she had told me that one of her main reasons to lose weight was to be able to fit in certain spaces and be able to go to certain things and do certain things with her life. And I was like, but I was young at the time, but I was like, "Can't you do that already?" Like, I didn't see it as like a fat phobic thing
Yeah.
from that lens. But I would always be like, "You could go. We could do this instead. Let's just drive. We don't gotta." But I want to be able to sit in the plane. You ain't.
Yeah.
Let's find a different way. Like, you know what I mean? But
Yeah. And see, that's the thing, right? Like,
mm-hmm.
we talk about accessibility, but when we think really hard about it, and even not hard, it's actually not hard.
Yeah,
If we make things accessible for people who need the accessibility, it's still accessible for everybody else.
yeah.
Building ramps doesn't make anything less accessible to anyone. Having elevators doesn't make anything less accessible to anyone.
Talk about it.
Taller doors, making your doors taller, making the doors wider. That doesn't make anything less accessible to anyone. It makes things more accessible to the people who need it. And if you don't need it, well, then you just don't need it. But yay, because it's still here.
Exactly.
Like, again, taller, wider doors. We don't think about how if someone has the need for assisted, like a wheelchair or a
Yeah.
power chair, if they need that assistance, the door frames need to be wider because their chairs won't fit through.
Exactly.
And if we know that these people need this assistance,
Mm-hmm.
why not just make things very naturally accessible?
Exactly. But because we are in this space of exclusion,
Hmm.
everything has to be exclusive, from the things that we wear to the things that we can buy to the things that we can listen to the things that we can watch. Like,
Hmm.
everything has to be an exclusive drop. Everything has to be exclusive. And that just carries on into our livelihood because everything is divided in such a way where, oh no, only this people have access to that.
And that, you know what, that just made me think about
Mm-hmm.
like shirts and clothing. We don't need to, the larger sizes don't have to cost more. Everything can just cost the same amount.
Exactly.
You could just make whatever size, from especially for my merchandising line.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's the same amount. The extra small is the same exact price as the 5X. Yes, do I recognize that more material has to be needed for the 5X?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's why everything's just going to be the same price.
Exactly.
No one's going to be penalized for needing more material than someone else, but if we just make it all the same price.
You own to something. I've been saying that for a while. I work in retail for quite a while, and I work at Target now. But um, when I was working at this West African clothing store, this tall and curvy woman came in, and she had a really big butt and a really big waist, and she was like, this ain't about to fit me." And I was like, well, it does say, like, I was working with her as her, like, the stylist. And I remember being like, well, here's the thing that I don't like about this. And I'm gonna be one of the honest people that you're gonna work with. I don't know if this is gonna fit you because this thing says one size fits all, but and they do have larger sizes, but I have no idea. We got a fitting room. We can try this out. But I realized that, like, she was like, man, it is so hard to shop for me. I can't just shop online. I have to like get certain measurements. Like, she's like, I have a tailor, I have a stylist. Like, I'm like, that's all expensive. She's like, yeah, no kidding. And I was
Yeah.
like, why? I never understood why, if you go to the store, there's certain sizes, but then it stops at a certain size. How
Yep.
are we to who are we to determine someone else's body type? And I've
Yeah.
said this everywhere. I'm like, I don't like dress codes because that's not adhering to someone's body type. That's not adhering to everybody's body. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I have bigger thighs, and every single retail job I've ever had, they're like, you can't wear shorts. Why? Why can't I wear shorts though? Because they're comfortable for me. You know what I mean? Or they'll be like, your shorts are too short. And I'm like, this makes me, it makes me mad, because it's like, while I am not like a curvy plus size woman, I do have bigger thighs. So if I am not able to wear certain things, I'm going to be uncomfortable, right? But you prefer me to squeeze into this and do the work because you want me to look a certain way. I've always hated dress codes. Even in school, I would get in trouble for that because, again, bigger thighs, bigger butt, they'd be like, "Oh, you're a distraction to the boys," or whatever. I'm like, "No, that's on them. If I'm a distraction, that's on them. Have them go somewhere else." You know what I mean?
Dress codes and dress policies are all very much inherently fat phobic as well as patriarchal.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That's just annoying. I honestly like, and I've always just said, if you want someone to dress a certain way, then provide them with a uniform.
Yep.
Provide them with the tools so that they look that certain way. Don't just be
Yep.
like, "Oh, you need to go buy X, Y, and Z, and you can't have this, and when you do wear this, I'm gonna write you up." If you a company and you want me to look a certain way, aren't we a team? Aren't we a team? I'm just saying, if we a team, then y'all need to be providing the team outfits, like the same way that people on the athletes, like the athletes get to wear the same outfits. Like everybody wears the same jersey. Everybody like, I played sports. Now, if y'all want it to be unison, then y'all should make it unison.
Yeah.
But they don't want to provide that. They don't want to
Well,
provide that. They come up with,
capitalism.
who? That's always the answer. Is that always the answer? My God. Capitalism and
And that's a whole
patriarchy.
nother, and that's a whole nother subject on
I
its own.
know.
But yeah, so that's what, like, the workshops, it's kind of what they exist in.
Mm-hmm.
And I also do one-on-one coaching too. So body love and self-love coaching one-on-one sessions. And then there's a lot of different like group workshops,
Mm-hmm.
and I do also host and MC different shows, all from variety shows to fundraisers and everything in
Oh, that is
between.
awesome. So I guess it would probably be hard for you to choose which one would be your favorite, but which one would be your favorite?
What's like my favorite thing to do?
Yeah, under the umbrella of
MC.
Love Thy Belly.
MCing is definitely my favorite thing to do.
Okay.
I love looking out to a crowd or a room full of people
Mm-hmm.
and showing everyone how to love themselves by just being myself.
I love that. But see,
I mean, it's
that's
incredible.
that's powerful. There's no greater power than just stepping in your power and showing the people, like, I ain't got no problem with the body that I'm in. I ain't got no problem with the
Hmm.
body that I live in. Like,
Hmm.
and like, because there's gonna always be, unfortunately, because of the society that we live in, there's always gonna be comparisons. There's always gonna be that negative rhetoric that you hear, and for you to be able to say, "Nah, I got the tools to combat that. It don't even phase me no more." Or even on the days that it does phase you, it never brings you back to that lowest point where you're like, "Man, I hate my body." Nope, I got three things to say. I got three things to say. Let's do it. Like, I love that. That is so
And
powerful.
sometimes I still have to fake it, right? It's like
Yeah, of course.
it becomes automated too, right? If I'm having that bad day, again, like, I am not going to be positive. I'm not going, and I'm nowhere near perfect by any means.
Mhm.
And so I don't have to fake it and say, here, look, I already know your automatic three things. Go ahead and say those things.
Mhm.
But what I'll do is I'll keep saying them and I'll keep saying them
It's repetitive.
until it's like, all right, you don't believe it, you don't mean it, but at least you can get up now.
Mhm.
Go ahead and get up and get moving, right? Because life is going to go on.
Yeah,
That's a hard pill to swallow. I know that's rough. I know it sucks. I know it doesn't feel good, but life goes on.
you're
It does
right.
not matter what you are experiencing. It does not matter how hard something is. It doesn't matter what the day is doing. It doesn't matter who you've lost, what you've lost. The world still revolves. And that is
Yeah,
hard. It is hard. What do you mean? My life is falling apart. Shouldn't the world stop? No, baby, it doesn't.
it
It does
doesn't.
not stop. It keeps going. Now you get to take the time you need. You
Exactly.
absolutely do. You need to take that time for yourself. You need to be with yourself. You need to figure out what that means. Does that mean that you're isolating for a short period of time? Does that mean that you're reaching out to your support system? Does
Mm-hmm.
that mean that you're seeking out you're seeking out professional help, right? So
Exactly.
whatever it means, you find what it means for you, and then you continue to go and grow through that thing.
Yeah.
But to think that the world stops because stuff is happening to you, it doesn't do that.
It
It
does
does not
not.
at all.
That was the hardest pill for me to swallow. It was like I used to always be like, I just need a moment. I just need a moment. It's so much. I just need a moment. And I could never find that moment because I think at that time I was constantly in that state of like comparison, denial, ignoring, and then going through like the cyclical behavior of like all the unhealthy things that I was picking up, like eating and having a really negative relationship with food and things like that. And I feel like seeing platforms such as yours and seeing other platforms that include all different types of bodies and say like, nah, it's okay for you to eat, like it's okay for you to eat this, or you know what I mean, like you don't have to punish yourself and all these different things that we've been talking about. It has helped me see like, man, I do love my body. Like when I have those negative, like I'll have a negative thought now and I'll be like, I love me. I love me. And it's not because I have a negative thought, but I truly am genuinely at a place in my life where the negative thought no longer allows, like I'm no longer allowing the negative thought to allow me to say something negative about myself that I know
Mhm.
I don't even believe. I
Yep.
don't believe it. It's somebody else's voice that's
A
saying it.
projection.
Yeah. So it's
And
like,
it's like it's I love me and I choose me
whoo, that
every day.
part. That
I
part.
choose to love me, and when I'm at my worst, I
Mm,
choose to love me when I'm at my darkest. I choose to love me
yes.
when I make mistakes. I choose to
Mm,
love me even when I cause harm intentionally or unintentionally to others,
yes.
because everyone is going to at some point in their life do something that is unintentional but it still impacts someone in a negative way. It just happens. It just happens.
If we were perfect, heck, even the robots make mistakes. They scare the crap out of me and they do make mistakes. And that's something we got to understand. Even in technology there is issues because technology was invented by
People.
humans.
Hmm.
Like that's what I mean. People make mistakes, and I feel like when we're talking about our healing, when we're talking about embracing the totality of ourselves and our bodies, it has to start with us understanding like, look, I'm not perfect. Because it's when you pressurize yourself and you're like, oh, I'm so perfect, I'm so perfect, that's when you crack,
Eh,
because you're not.
nope, none of us are.
You're not.
None of
And I
us.
saw that happen a lot growing up. I see that happen every day. People really get to the point where I'm perfect. I used to say this thing, and I don't say this anymore because my friend basically showed me a different way, and I'm gonna tell you. But basically, I used to say, I've mastered my piece. I've mastered my piece. And she said, I don't think it's fair for you to yourself to say that you've mastered your piece when mastering something means that there's no room for improvement, and there's always room for improvement in protecting your peace and preserving your peace.
Come
And
on.
I was like, yeah, I'm not saying that no more because I haven't. Because the thing is, it's still going to rain outside. It's still going to be things that happen. So I can't say, oh, I've mastered my peace. No, I made it to a destination. I made it to finally feeling and knowing what peace feels like, because I'm
Hmm.
not in a chaotic environment anymore in a dysregulated system. But I'm still going to have to protect that peace. There's still going to be
Yeah.
things that come up.
Boundaries.
Let's boundaries. And that is uncomfortable.
Okay.
Setting them is uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Like, I'm
Setting
just
them,
saying,
standing in them, communicating them, being okay with saying like the boundary that I used to have, I may have outgrown that. And so now I need to
ooh,
expand my boundary. Or maybe I need to change the language I'm
ooh,
using around my boundary, right? Because sometimes they do change.
What's that look like?
Your life experience change, because your life and lived experiences may change. And so the
Mm-hmm.
boundary itself may change too. And maybe sometimes your boundaries started out as really, really strict. And so now it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I needed to set that in this way for this experience that I was having, but maybe this is not the experience that I'm having any longer. And so maybe I don't have to
Mm.
be like that. And a friend of mine was talking to me, and they said that boundaries are the permissions that we give others to love us in the way that we want to be loved, not
Mm.
limitations on how to love us. And I,
Say that again. Say
okay.
repeat that. Because what?
The boundaries are the permissions that we give others to learn how to love us, not the limitations on how to love us.
Wow. Because I think that's a word. I need to sit with that for a second. One moment. Whoa. Because I think for so long, because I have the boundaries book here too, but I think for so long, when we always talk about boundaries or when we hear boundaries, we see it as limitation.
Hmm.
We see it as, nope, I'm limiting your access to me in this way. I'm limiting your access to me, whether that be mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever it is. We see it as a limitation. But if we see it as a permission, that's powerful. Where she? Who said that? That's wow. That is powerful. Just like my friend said, you ain't mastered your piece. Now I don't. You
And I
wow.
love the conversations that like we're
Mm-hmm.
growing into having, right? Because we have to be honest, like our families probably didn't have these kinds of conversations around mental health, around mindfulness, around boundaries, because the language wasn't necessarily readily available for a lot of us. And now that
It was
this
crazy
language,
this and crazy that,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
that was it. And it's crazy that I'll say it's crazy in a really good way, in a positive shift, that we have somehow found ourselves with the knowledge and the different words that we can now categorize things. It's not
Hmm.
just crazy. It's no, this is something that we need to actually take a look at. It's not just let's just sweep this under the rug. This is no, we not just I'm not just about to sit here and gossip. I'm not I want to progress. You
Hmm.
know, and I think that is that is something very powerful and beautiful for us to be able to have in our new generation as we keep learning about healing, because I feel like they didn't even hear about healing. I feel like healing was a foreign concept. I feel like that word probably was never used in conversation. They were probably just like, man, I don't have feelings. I have feelings, but I'm gonna just ignore them or
Or like,
whatever the case.
maybe somebody said, like, oh, I think I'm depressed. Well, depress these dishes. Like
Facts.
language.
Exactly. Like, get your butt up and depress these dishes. You ain't depressed. And I recently had a conversation with an elder in my family. And this is how you know I'm passionate about what I do. My family, so it was my mom, my dad, and my younger sister. They were all looking at me because of what my elder was saying, which was, my niece say she got anxiety. I'd be like, that's the white people problem. You ain't got no anxiety. You ain't got no depression. And I just was so quiet because I was like, this ain't the time. I could, but this ain't the time. And my mom, when we got out, she was like, I thought you were going to rip her a new one. I was praying. I was like, please don't say nothing. Just let her have it. She didn't grow up the way you did. I was like, Mama, I know when to pick and choose my battles. That's a battle I'm not going to win. I asked her one question and she told me everything I needed to know. I think I had asked her something about, I said, you don't think depression is real? And she was like, man, I grew up in this time. This ain't nobody been depressed. I ain't got time to be sad. I was like, never mind. I can't ask you anything else because that's how you feel. That's your lived experience, right?
Hmm.
And that's the thing. I see what you're saying when you say, because a lot of people's language is different. There is still a language barrier in our lived experiences, because I could say, oh, I am depressed, and someone could be like, that's in your head. This, you ain't really depressed. You made that up. You just trying to get attention. I recall my anxiety being, you a hypochondriac. No, I'm not. I wish I were. this is in my body and I can't express it, things like that. So I see what you mean.
I
That's
sometimes think
interesting.
that we forget that mental health, mental illness, that these things don't have a look. They don't have a face. I
Exactly.
oftentimes think about the comedian, long-standing comedian Robin Williams. You know,
Yes.
I mean,
I think
even
about him all the time.
even the family members came out and they were like, "We didn't even know. We
But
had no
then,
idea." And I think I often think about that, right? Like people who have status and stature and celebrity and fame and money and resource and access, they
mhm.
struggle with their mental health.
Mm,
They struggle
yes.
with mental illnesses. And they still don't have people who believe them. Maybe and maybe just they don't know too, because we have this idea of like, well, depression is someone who doesn't get up, or someone who's sad, or someone who stays in the house, or someone whose house is dirty, or
Mhm.
someone, that's what depression is. Because that's how it's shown
Yeah.
in film, and that's how
Yeah.
it's shown in magazines and movies. That's what we see. And
Exactly.
anytime we have a representation of something, well, that becomes our reality, right? Like so
Yes.
our perception about mental illness has a specific look. And I think now we're starting
Mhm.
to realize that there is no look for mental illness. Black and
There
brown
is no
folks
look.
experience mental illnesses at the same rate as non-black and brown folks because
Mhm.
of the experiences that we have with non-black and brown folks, right? And so it's like
Yes.
mental health issues, the experiences we're all susceptible to, or we can all
Mhm.
have, they have nothing to do with what we look like, but it has everything to do
Nothing.
with what's happening around us. And sometimes what's happening all the time, what's happening inside of us. And a lot of times
Mhm.
external factors are what attribute to our mental health. And
Yeah.
for some
And
people,
I think
it is just, it is their chemistry, it is their biology, it is their makeup, and like
yeah,
those are things that have to be addressed too. But I
of
think what I
course.
want people to realize is that nothing looks the way we think. I smile all the time, but that does not mean that I don't still have anxiety. That does not mean that I don't still suffer from depression. That does not mean that I'm not still living with PTSD. That doesn't mean that I may not also be on the autism spectrum, right? Because like there are
Mhm.
things that we are learning about people that we can't just base it off of what we perceive them to be.
Exactly. I feel like I often heard, "You don't look like you depressed. You don't look like you got anxiety. You look crazy." Uh, okay. Like, how do you? And that's the thing. I feel like we there needs to be, and I think we do have these movements now where we're looking at the language and the dialogue around that, because like you said, it doesn't look the same. There is no specific look to depression or anxiety, especially anxiety, because in black women, anxiety shows up as irritated.
Okay.
So irritation and frustration, I often have to tell people, look, I ain't the angry black woman right now. I'm just irritated with myself. I'm not mad at you. I'm irritated with myself. I'm exhibiting anxiety. And I do that because a lot of the times that the people that I'm interacting with, they're not of color. So they're not going to understand, oh, she's not pissed off at me. She's overthinking. You know what I mean? They're not going to understand that.
Mm-hmm.
And it sucks that I have to be able to say that, but now that I know that, oh yeah, I'm gonna let y'all know. I'm gonna let y'all
That's
know
you got
because
the
I don't
rules
want y'all to
for
get
it.
it misconstrued. Yeah, like I don't want to get y'all misconstrued and think like, oh, she's just because I've been in those situations too where they're like, oh, she was loud, obnoxious, and all these other things, and I'm like, bruh, I was panicking. What are y'all talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
But that's that same thing too, right? Like everything shows up differently in everybody. But I like how you said that specifically with black women. We've
exactly.
noticed that anxiety shows up as being irritated, or shows up as being hyper focused, or it shows up as, sometimes for some people it might be being hypersexualized. It just really
Yep.
varies based off of our individual lived experiences. I remember I told,
Exactly.
we're no longer friends, but I told a friend of mine, I said that like they want to talk to me about something. I was like, well, we got to just talk about it because I have anxiety. Everyone has anxiety. Okay, I'm not
Yep.
discounting that other people have anxiety. What I am saying is, in this
Mhm.
moment, what you're doing is causing me to be more anxious. It's causing me more anxiety. And you're intentionally doing it. And I'm letting you know. And instead of taking ownership of that, you just want to generalize the emotion and the experience that I'm sharing with you. And I think, again, a lot of that is
Yeah.
because when we have an idea or a perception about who someone is, we place them in this box
Mhm.
and we don't allow them to have a full lived experience. And we don't also
Yeah.
recognize that we're at fault for not allowing them to have a full lived experience, because we've decided that we only want them to show up as this. And so when they show up as anything else, we're not accepting that.
Exactly. I had a similar situation where we're no longer friends either, but I used to get that generalized thing of like, okay, you act like you're the only one going through these things, da 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 da. And I'm like, I'm not, but that was how I was raised. Like I was raised to believe that my feelings were far, or the what was going on around me was far better than other somebody else's situation. The imaginative homeless person that's struggling and can't get food, you know what I mean? Like, which is a very real person, but in that scenario it would always be, man, there are people homeless on the street and you got a roof over your head and you and but yeah, what's happening in that household? Like you see what I'm saying? Like the chaos and the dysfunctional situations in which that I was brought up was made to be so lighthearted that when I started to like grow into myself and I started to make Let's Get Uncomfortable, it was so vulnerable to where people were like I had friends checking in on me after I would kind of accidentally reveal some bombs, some truth bombs about my life, and I'd be like, "Oh, I'm fine. Are you sure that was a lot?" I didn't know it was a lot. Let me go to therapy. Let me sort let me sort this out. But it didn't always start like that, because when I had first started therapy, I was like this. Like I was like holding on to all the experiences, all the feelings, everything was just bottled up. And I remember my therapist was like, one of them, she had said, "How can I help you if I don't know where to begin? Like if I don't know where we need to address things, we got to pick somewhere." Now I know it's a lot, but we got to start somewhere. And I was like, okay, so I kind of that first session I had, I ended up just dumping everything. But I say all that to say that like you can't get anywhere until you finally know how to release it. Until you validate that person and say, yes, I understand that other people have lived experiences as well, but that should not discredit what I am telling you right now, as you said. So I definitely grew up in that environment of where it was like, Joe Schmo on the street going through harder times than
Yeah,
you, so I
and
don't know what
it
you
is not to
complaining for.
discount someone else's lived experience.
Yeah,
You know, I always like to make
exactly.
sure that at some point we do recognize when there is a privilege that exists in our lives. Like I recognize that
Oh
I
yeah,
have the privilege of being very educated. I recognize that that is a privilege that I have. It's a privilege that I've worked very hard
same.
for, but it is still a privilege that I do have. But that does not mean that I
Exactly.
can't still say when something is bothering me. If school is hard, I should be able to say that school is hard, because it is. That is still my lived
Exactly.
experience. That's not to say that someone else who is experiencing something completely different is not hard. It is. But I hate when people say, I call it the oppression Olympics. People like to compare
Yes, me too. I
oppression. It's like,
I can't stand
we
that.
don't need to see whose life is worse than whose. You know, I'm saying that this is bothering me. This is something I'm experiencing. This is harmful. I don't like it. You can still also share about something that you're experiencing, something that feels harmful to you, and there not be a comparison of the two.
Exactly. And I think that's what I feel like that's what this entire episode has been about. Comparison is the thief of
Right?
joy, right? But we really need to understand why comparison is so, I mean, I feel like we've already discussed it, but I know for a fact that like comparison for me just makes me doubt
Mm-hmm.
myself. I don't know if it does that for anybody else, but like when I compare myself to somebody else's life that I'm seeing on social media or that I'm seeing out in public, I'm like, dang, I haven't gotten married. I don't have kids or whatever. It makes you see what you
Yeah,
lack.
it creates that
And I think
imposter syndrome and that self doubt. And then, like we said earlier,
Mm,
those feelings of insignificance, right? Like if your
yes.
social media or whatever it is that you use, if all of your stuff is filled with people having these certain accolades and accomplishments and things like that, if it's filled with those things, then what you'll do is you'll start thinking about how you don't have certain things, or how you don't have this, or how you don't have that, and we're not being mindful, right? And thinking about, well, this is what I do have. This is what I am grateful
Yeah.
for. This is what I am thankful for.
Yeah.
This is what does exist in my life. And it's not to say that you can't still want more, you can't still want things. I want to be rich.
Mm-hmm.
I want to have wealth.
I
I
want
want
to
to have
have wealth.
financial
Yes.
freedom. I want to be able to get
Yeah.
up and go and do and be and experience life on my own terms without having to clock in or without having to check in with anybody else. This is the lifestyle that I want. I also want to have a garden that
Mm-hmm.
someone else is taking care of, because I'm not going to do it because my fingers don't do that. But like I want, and I think what I'm getting at is, I want black women, I want women, I want cis people, I want women identifying, I want people who look like me, who are like me, who experience life in a very similar way that I do, to know that everything that you want out of life is possible. Every single thing,
Yes.
whatever it is that you have said, look, this is what I want, it is possible. I don't know what that journey is going to look like for you. I don't know how easy or how hard that world is going to be, or that road is going to be. But what I do know is that whatever it is that you want, it is absolutely and utterly possible. If it takes you 5 minutes, if it takes you 15 years, whatever it is possible. And it's possible because you said that you wanted it. So you have to go get it. And you
Mm-hmm.
can't you have to accept that there are going to be roadblocks, there are going to be obstacles, there are going to be things that are going to try to stop you at every turn that you take. But you have to just keep taking those, chin to chin, relax, rest, stop, take a break, rejuvenate, whatever it is that you need to do. But that thing, that goal, that purpose, that calling that you have, it is never going to stop. If that is your calling, it is always going to be right there. Maybe it's at the door every turn. It's right there. It's on the that's
You're
your
like, why can't I
calling. It's
leave?
on the phone, like it wants you. And so if this is your
Yes.
calling that you're working towards, whatever it is, the thing that you want the most out of life, it is going to come to you. You are going to get it, and you are going to put in a lot of work for it too. But then also, the
That
other
is
side of that
beautiful.
is, there are going to be some things that come to you with ease. There are. That doesn't make those things any less important. It doesn't make those things any less valuable. And I think sometimes, especially as Black women, we feel like things that come to us with ease, because we didn't struggle or because we didn't have to have strife to get it, that it doesn't hold the same power and doesn't hold the same value. But that's not the truth. There are going to be things where we have to harp on and work for, and there are going to be things that's just like, here it is. That happens.
Yeah. You're right. That's powerful. I'm sitting in, like everything that you're saying is just resonating with me. I appreciate you for even wanting to touch on all of the topics that we touched on, because honestly, your movement is
Thank you.
incredible. I was, like I said, I was doing a deep dive. I was looking at everything. I was like, oh my God, this is like incredible, because I feel like we need more body positivity in the fight of against body dysmorphia. We need more people that are like, hey, here you go. I don't want you taking pre-workouts like crazy and becoming addicted to the pre-workout, but I want you to know that here are these tools available for you to fight that body dysmorphia, because guess what? It's hard.
Mhm.
It's
I have it
hard.
every day. I
It's
have it
not.
every day. I mean, and I get that people think that I don't struggle because of the work that I do, but no, I do the work that I do because
Yeah.
I struggle with it. Because I know that there is
Yeah.
someone else
Yeah.
very much like me who doesn't necessarily have the same resources or tools that I've worked for, or that I have, or that I acquired, who
Exactly.
needs that message of, it's going to take work. It's going to be hard, but sometimes it's also going to be so fulfilling. I will say that the best
Mhm.
thing that starting this business and this organization and this movement, the best thing that it gave to me was, it gave me my life. I tell people every day, without Love Thy Belly, I don't know where I would be. I need Love Thy Belly needs me, yeah, because I have to run it, but I need Love Thy Belly. I need it. It
Mhm.
saved me from my darkest moments. It saved me from myself. because
Yeah.
sometimes the biggest, not even some, the biggest battle you're going to fight is with yourself.
Yeah. Y'all see that trope all the time in the movies? That's what we're talking about right now. The trope where they always be like, the main character has to fight himself. This is crazy. Y'all ever remember the I don't even remember how many numbers it is, but the I always think about I mentioned this on one of my earlier episodes. It's shout out to the cause and effect of people pleasing. If y'all want to go pay attention to that one. But basically I was talking about how like the different levels of conflict when you're talking about story writing. There's self versus self, or the main character versus somebody else, and all the other stuff. Self versus self is always chosen for a reason, because you gonna have to go against yourself sometimes. You gonna have to go against the darker you, the inner me. Like, remember all the memes with Kermit the Frog where he was like, me to me? Yeah, yeah, it's a thing.
Or the ones with
It
the
is
different
a
Spider-Mans.
thing. Oh my god, like
Yeah.
yeah, it is a thing. And I think it's the most common thing that gets, like, it gets talked about, but I don't think they realize the deepness of it, like the substance that's behind those memes that you're talking about. Like, yeah, your inner dialogue is telling you to do some stuff, and you got to make the choice if you gonna do it or you
Yeah.
not gonna do it. And
Yeah.
that's real. Like you said, that is some real stuff. Shadow work will tell you a lot about yourself.
Okay. So much. So much. And I mean, facing yourself is not easy. You have to face
Mm-hmm.
you live with your flaws every single day. Like earlier you had mentioned, you don't like treat yourself like you would treat your best friend. But you're not faced with your best friend's flaws every single moment of every day. But you are faced with and I'm saying flaws in
Nope.
quotes, right? You are faced with your flaws, your
Yeah, yeah.
shortcomings every single day of your life. And I set up with flaws in quotations
Exactly.
because the idea of flaws is weird, because then it means like that there's this idea of perfection that exists. And let's just go ahead and everybody just say perfection is not real. It doesn't exist. It exists in nothing. Computers aren't perfect. Technology is not perfect. Nothing is going to be perfect. Everything is going to
Exactly.
take work. Some work is easy. Some
Yes.
work is hard. Some work is works of art, where it's like the work, that
Mm,
journey was so beautiful they didn't even feel like work. And so what I want people to
exactly.
realize is, yes, loving yourself is hard work, but it's not the work of like, I hate going to my job work. It's the work of, I'm creating this beautiful piece of art, and that art happens to be me. And so every day I get to add a
Yes.
new layer to it, something different, something just a little more. And when I say art, I mean visual art, I mean music, I mean theater. You can think about it as like adding another note, or adding a new layer of sand, or a new layer of paint, or adding like a new scene to it, like however
Mm-hmm.
you want. Working on yourself is working on a beautiful body of art. It is a masterpiece, consistently in progress of becoming even more masterful.
Mm.
And it happens to be you. You are that
Man.
masterpiece.
Right. That is amazing. Um, can you shout out your
Yes. So you can follow Love Thy Belly across all social media platforms at Love Thy Belly, LoveThyBelly. And you'll know you're there because there's purple everywhere.
Is
It's
that your favorite
the
color? Or does
first
that
interview I
signify
ever
something?
did for Love Thy Belly back in 2019. They asked me, well, what's your color? And purple
Uh-huh.
just came out of my mouth. But I didn't think about it. It just came out of my
Oh
mouth. And so then I was like,
wow.
well, I've said it, so now I got to roll with it. And I always knew purple meant royalty. And so for me, it was just kind of like, well, I guess
Yeah.
it makes sense. Purple means royalty anyway. So I rolled with it. But yeah, it became like my calling. It became like a lot of times people will say, oh, I know what you're going to wear. And usually it's, yeah.
Purple. I love that. I love that. I love blue. That's why my
Okay.
thing is blue. Uh, when I was growing up, my entire bedroom was a turquoise blue with a whole bunch of different stuff. But I was like, yeah, it's gonna be blue. It's gonna be turquoise. It's gonna be blue. It's gonna be. But somehow I started to find
Mm-hmm.
sage lately,
Uh-huh.
like sage green.
Calming.
It's just a calming green. I like calming colors. That's it. But this has
I was gonna say,
been
and like I also have a website, LOVETHYBELLY, lovethybelly.org. If you go to my website, we just got a revamp. Shout outs to my social media manager. Holla. The website and everything is on
okay.
there. Any press that I've ever done, any events that I've ever done, getting in touch and getting in contact with Love Thy Belly, following us across all social media platforms, staying up to date on anything that's new with Love Thy Belly. You can get it from there as well. We are consistently growing and progressing as a 6-year-old movement.
I love
Thank
that. I'm
you.
so proud of you. I know we just recently
That means
met, but
so
I'm
much
so
to me.
proud of the
Thank
work that you are
you.
doing because like I said, it's incredible work. We need it. We need it.
Thank you.
We truly do. This
This
has
has
been
been
an
so healing
incredible
for me.
episode.
Thank you.
Like I yeah, I'm glad it could be. That's what we here for. We get
I love
uncomfortable,
it. I
we
love
talk.
it. Well, thank you for the space you've provided for us, Queen J.
But
I appreciate it.
thank you. I appreciate that. See, the goal is to just I always envision myself helping people understand that there's life after
Oof.
trauma if you want it.
Oof. I love that.
If you want it, because you
I
gotta
do.
want it. But that you really do. But this has been Queen J with Let's Get Uncomfortable. As always, you can find me at officially Queen underscore officially Queen J on Instagram and TikTok. You can find Let's Get Uncomfortable available everywhere. You can find it on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to your podcast and watch. We are now available on YouTube at Let's Get Uncomfortable Pod. I know, right? We on YouTube, y'all. I didn't think I was really doing this. But thanks for seeing and hearing me. This has been Queen J with Let's Get Uncomfortable. Peace.